First of all, can you, I hate to ask you this, but can you give me kind of a shortened version of your story? How did you come about being, should I say, an anti-drug crusader or a anti-drug expert?
As opposed to describing myself as anti anything, I always prefer to be considered pro sobriety or pro logical thought, I suppose. I don't know. I definitely wouldn't put myself in kind of that anti drug warrior class. As somebody who's a recovering addict himself, um, I sort of see the world a little differently, I think, than people who for whom it's only theoretical.
How did you first get involved in doing drugs, and then how did you turn your life around?
Well, the initial involvement, we left, my family moved from Colorado to the greater DC area when I was 12, I think. And um, really, I think my initial involvement came because there were just so many people using so many different things, and I really, really didn't fit in. I didn't understand how cities worked and urban environments, and I think what I came to realize a little bit later was, at least at the beginning of things, I was probably treating some mental health disorders that I have with those substances because um, I didn't come from any kind of money or anything, so we weren't. I wasn't going and seeing psychiatrists. So I guess I just kind of found stuff on the street that made life hurt a little bit less. And what ends up happening usually in those scenarios is we like to say in our typical 12-step triteness that it works until it doesn't. And so it worked for a little while and then became something that was much, much more of, it was handcuffs, not a parachute anymore. And it was Washington, D.C. in the mid 90s. Everybody was using, not everybody, people I was with were using quite a bit of everything. And it was a mess. I suppose I could have stayed out of the whole thing. I knew plenty of people who did, but um,
So
fit
where
in.
so where did you actually live in Washington, D.C.? I lived there for 10 years. Um, I worked on Capitol Hill, so I was a reporter there. And
Oh, cool.
I lived on Fifth Street for most of the time I was there. Fifth Street,
So we,
southeast. So I was, I could walk to the Supreme Court when I covered the court. Um, so where were you?
I was in Virginia.
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't live in the city. I just
Okay.
spent a lot of time in the city.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. Um, so what happened? Did you hit bottom or I mean, what happened? And I mean, tell us that story.
Well, it's a really long one. All I will. I had spent quite a bit of time, maybe the last year, maybe year and a half of my use. I mean, I was 18 when I got sober. Um, just totally hopeless. I mean, maybe even hopeless is the wrong word. It's just such a in the moment existence that I never. Um, there just was no tomorrow, and there certainly wasn't a next month, and there sure as hell wasn't a next year. So it's not like I was planning for anything or working towards anything. What you're doing is just kind of trying to get through the day with the least amount of pain, feeling, and emotion that you can. And it's an easy way to live when you never stop and consider it. I mean, when you think about the only thing that you're doing every day is kind of like just trying to get by and just trying to figure out some way to hurt less. You just kind of get caught up in that rut. And it wasn't until I actually, a very dear friend of mine to this day, he had gotten sober. A couple of my friends did, and they'd all tried to talk me into it. The court system had tried to talk me into it. All kinds of people had. He convinced me, again, a kind of long story, but he convinced me to go with him on a trip, and to not use or drink for 5 days. And in the course of those 5 days, I think there was enough clarity that happened. There was enough opportunity to sort of pause and to take a little bit of a look at where my life was, that I got pretty scared. Like I didn't quit using because I like wanted a better life, or because I wanted to finally do what everybody told me was the right thing to do. I quit using because I took that time off, and I was able to step back and get scared enough that, and really any one of those days could have been my last one. And I certainly was headed towards absolutely nowhere. So I really spent the first 2 years of my life, or my first 2 years of my recovering life, not so much in recovery as just staying abstinent. I mean, I was going to, certainly one AA or NA meeting every day, a lot of the times two, 9 or 10 meetings a week, and just to stay clean. It's not, I hadn't found the other side of this thing yet. We like to say in the 12-step world that if we give it enough time and we do the work, we end up being happy, joyous, and free. And I didn't find that for about 2 years. I got scared, and fear kept me from using until I actually started to do some of that work.
I'll just add here, not many people find happy, joyous, and free in general. So yeah, if your program's working, it's working. So I grew up in Fresno, California, before I went to college, and never wanted to go back. But I worked there on television for a while before I went to Washington. And I come from many relatives who have addictions, and my brother included. So it's not it's something when you're able to put it down and move on. So congratulations on that. But
That sure could have been a lot easier.
Fear is a great motivator. So if your friend gave you that, that's a good friend. That fear of,
thanks, Mike.
I always think that part of the reasons I didn't drink and become an alcoholic, or do drugs, was because of fear. Because I never wanted to have to lose my freedom in any way. So yeah. What can you say about our current situation in the United States with our addictions? Because it's seems to be getting worse. There's the pharma thing, the whole situation with painkillers, but also there's the legalization of marijuana, which I've heard you speak on that. But I don't know, what are we doing here to ourselves as far as recovering and trying to be clean and sober?
Oh, we're in a big damn mess. We are. So what we have done in the last few years, I think, as a society, and certainly from a lot of the policy, is decided that policy and things that we had in the past weren't perfect. And so we should just swing the pendulum completely in the other direction. And I don't want to downplay the amount of not perfect that the drug laws in this country have been. We have never, ever gotten close to nailing this. But what's been presented to the American people seems to be this ridiculously false dichotomy of either throw everybody in prison or provide access to everything to everyone. And neither one at all makes sense unless you run some sort of industrial prison or manufacture and sell some sort of drugs. For the rest of us who are kind of caught in the middle, um, we're in this place that just seems to me it's nonsensical. An argument that is pretty simple and straightforward and makes perfect logical sense just gets refuted with a tagline. We are in a place inside of our country, and our country has always struggled with misuse, addiction, intoxication, as much as any other country in the world, and more than most. It's a mentality thing, I think. But we're in a place right now where we are experiencing overdose rates that we have never ever seen before, and not just from one certain substance. For a very long time, this we decided to call it an opiate crisis and to focus just on opiates, which was good. They had gotten out of control, but what we weren't looking at or considering were the real underlying base causes for why a lot of people used, as well as the actual um, efficacy behind some of the treatment that we introduced to them. And so when we segmented these different substances one from another, it was really easy for us to just kind of look at just opiates, when in reality, last year we had a higher amphetamine overdose rate than we have ever had recorded before in this country. Our deaths due to alcoholism continued to beat every single year the year prior. Are the cannabis use disorder, the amphetamine use disorder, the opiate use disorder, everything is just at levels that we've never seen before. And we're actually even starting to see overall percentages. We've always said it's about 16%, or I'm sorry, about 10% of this country is genetically predisposed to addiction. So we'll always have about a 10% addiction rate. That's starting to look like it's more like 15 or 16% because we're using stronger stuff earlier. We are missing the mark in some really significant ways on the way and how we're looking at drug policy in this country.
What it's frightening.
Yeah.
I don't think that many people really even know. Well, unless you're related to somebody who's a substance abuser, and so that those numbers are growing. But was it? I don't know. Was it COVID that? What has gotten us to this place? Is it a multitude of things? Is it bad drug policy? Because I don't ever recall us having a good drug policy in the United States. Like you said, it's let's put them all in jail. Let's criminalize it. Even marijuana was criminalized. And let's throw them all in jail, or, let's just give you some more painkillers. So what do you, what's the problem? Can we blame a lot of it on COVID or not?
We can certainly blame some of it on COVID, but you're asking a pretty philosophical question. And I think that it'd be hard to answer that. I guess I know some folks who could answer it with real data. I think Dr. Compton, Dr. Volkoff, some of these folks out of Washington could answer it, but why do we use and why are we using more? It's if we want to oversimplify the problem, we inevitably will oversimplify the solution. But we love oversimplified solutions. We love a quick fix. We love a pill for a thing instead of work for it. It's easy to say, well, those damn Sacklers in Purdue Pharma, they pushed Oxycontin on everybody, so they got, and yes, culpability absolute money, the reason why. It would be really easy for us to say those cartels, and they're switching from cannabis to amphetamine, and bringing so much meth in that's so pure. We could say those Chinese corporations who are sending raw pseudoephedrine directly to Mexican cartels so that they can send us stronger meth. But none of those answer the questions. Like, every single thing that we look at on those always is on the supply side. And that's what we've kind of screwed up, I think, to some degree, is we continue to kind of go after the people who are bringing it to us instead of maybe ask a really, really hard question. And that is, why do we, in one of the wealthiest countries, most successful places in this country, or in this world, why do we need to get as intoxicated as we get? Why do Americans have the highest substance abuse and mental health disorder rates of anywhere in the recorded world? Why? And I think if we're willing to ask that question more, why do we use, instead of who's giving us what we use, there's just no simple, quick answer to it. It's not like we can pass a change to a law and fix it.
Because why do we use has many answers.
That's where it gets philosophical.
Right.
Some people use because they don't have appropriate access to mental health care. I mean, their schools are terrible. They never get to go to college. They grow up in poverty with no hope of better. Some people use because their family members use and hurt them or abuse them, or people do terrible things to them when they're young. Some people use because they're genetically predisposed to it. Some people use because they twist a knee playing volleyball and a doc overprescribes. Like, the reasons why we use are vast, but the simple question that I feel like it comes down to is, why are we using so much, and why have we gotten to this place, I guess, where we're just sort of accepting it as the norm? In my book, I sort of put forth this question, which was, look, at what point did substance use, or at what point did intoxication go from celebratory, sort of a rite of passage, let's have drinks at the wedding, or 21, everybody's going to probably drink too many that night, to I should be intoxicated every single day of the week? When did that shift here?
Over a long period of time, it shifted. It didn't happen overnight. Tell me about your book.
Oh yeah, sure. It's out there everywhere. It's called Weed Inc.
Weed Inc. Okay.
So one of the basic premises, and again, I don't want to oversimplify something so complex, but one of the basic premises that I come to this discussion with is that the corporate interests behind the sales of these things are absolutely culpable and are a giant part of the problem. So the most devastating, hands down, far and away, the most devastating substance in this country, I mean, like twice over to the next one, is alcohol. And it's not because alcohol is worse than these other drugs. It's simply because it's more widely available, it's cheaper, and it has a lower perception of harm. And the reality always has been that the problem users are the ones who buy the most of that product. So you have to not only target problem users, you have to continue to cultivate more problem users. So for the basic premise of that book is that the same thing that happened to alcohol, that happened to pharma, tobacco, has also happened to cannabis. That the gigantic corporate powers that be behind them are much more concerned with profit over anything else.
What do we do? I know there's another question for you. So we're in this situation, and it's really honestly been, I mean, I'm trying to do a series of stories on in videos and podcasts on, problems that we're not addressing, or that are kind of out of control. So it's, drug abuse, it's homelessness, and mental health, and it's all connected. it's interconnected. We have mental health problems. We abuse substances, and we find ourselves homeless. Um, and people are in an uproar because you can't go downtown because there's so many homeless people on the street, and they're intoxicated, and they're on drugs, and um, so it's starting to be that these problems that used to be, my dad was an alcoholic, and he was a happy um, alcoholic. So everyone would say, "You're so lucky. You have the nicest dad. He's the greatest dad."
Mm.
When he was at a party or out, but at the house, it was a totally different story. So it used to be that we kept that inside. Well, now it's not inside anymore. Now it's out there. Um, and what are we just not recognizing these problems, and there is no public policy? I don't see anybody, as they battle in Washington about the debt ceiling. I don't see a big concern about, well, maybe there is in that bill, if you could read it all, about homelessness and drug addiction and putting more money behind rehab programs and that kind of thing. I mean, maybe maybe you know more about this than I. Maybe it's in there, but
No,
I
they don't.
just see a lot of just BS coming out of, and always have. So it's not like, when I was a reporter, I would say, well, what are we going to do now? And it's like, well, we had a hearing. What more do you want us to do? Um, so yeah. So what do we do? What is the, when I talk to people that I know, who are kind of like not really in tune to, interconnection is unstable. They say, well, what can I do about it, Gloria? And it's like, I don't know. I mean, what do we do about it, Ben? Or do we, is there something to do that we can do now before we just get into a bigger pickle?
Part of the problem is that some of the things that we should be doing are difficult. And so let me answer that in two ways. And what my opinion on it is, and that's a somewhat informed opinion because I get to spend a lot of time with our nation's lawmakers, both at the federal and at the state levels, even internationally. First, I really don't think that the vast majority of politicians, like you said, they really don't care even a little bit because the people in question are not voting. And if they're not voting, I mean, the simple truth of it is that the political experience that I have, which gets to be unfortunately more and more every day, has shown me that about 1 out of every 10 people who I bump into actually means anything about what they say. The rest of them are just pandering to whatever the moment's polls direct them to pander to. And I don't care what side of the aisle we're talking about. I don't trust any of that nonsense. And I think unless they feel like it's going to advance their careers, they don't care. So from a public policy standpoint, if we wanted to do things, one, we could start to absolutely demand that our lawmakers care about and pay some attention to this. You said what you said at the beginning was very insightful. And one of the reasons that I've decided to, I guess, sort of make this my life is that I think that this is sort of foundational. I think that this is kind of at the bottom of the pyramid of the hierarchy of needs. And that is mental health and wellness, which is, you can't possibly, I don't think a thinking person could separate homelessness from mental health from drug addiction. I mean, they are all so intertwined and woven together. And then if we really wanted to get real about it, we'd have to consider poverty and the way that people's childhoods play out, their ACE scores, et cetera. The thing that we could do from a public policy standpoint is stop trying to address these things in silos, in isolation. Let's stop looking at this as an opiate crisis, and let's look at this as an addiction crisis. And if we look at it as an addiction crisis, we have to look at it as a mental health crisis. Mm-hmm. And if we look at it as a mental health crisis, then homelessness, mass shootings, these terrible events that take place around, they're included too. But the only practical solutions to this are very, very difficult. They are expanded access to screening and mental health care, real mental health care. They are putting a real effort out there to actually train a workforce that could handle the influx of people who would come in. And it's the government deciding that maybe they want to spend a little more money in keeping us well than they do in throwing people in prison or in fighting wars all over the place. On an individual level, so what you could do there, hold your politicians' feet to the fire on this. What we can do on an individual level, I think, is a couple fold. Get involved in this. You have to educate yourself first, or else you're going to end up getting taken advantage of.
Right.
But get involved in this conversation and have enough information to be able to push back when people say dumb things. And from the, as somebody who pretty firmly believes now, because I have moved to that happy, joyous, free place most days, not every day. Today's a good one. One of the things that we spend a lot of time in sort of the 12-step world and things talking about is this thing that's on the back of our coins that we get every year that says, "To thine own self be true." And it's not a selfishness. It's not a exclude the masses from me. It is, if I care for me, then I can do a better job of caring for you. So the challenge, I think, that I would throw out there to your listeners, if you say, well, what can I possibly do about substance abuse in this country? Use less, stop using, drink less, stop drinking, because every dollar that we take away from those corporations is one less that they can use to addict the other. If we say, what can I possibly do about mental health? Check your own mental health. And, as I went from somebody who 12-step to, geez, maybe I need professional therapeutic work, to then I need more than professional therapeutic work. I actually need pharma in my, I need antidepressants too. So now somebody I got 12-step, I've got my therapist, and I have my antidepressants that keep me, and I'm great talking about it. And that's one of those things that we can do on a more personal level. Like you really can't go out there and try and heal everything with unless we've taken a hard look at ourselves first. So maybe if a bunch of us just got healthier individually, that would contribute to something.
And you make such a good point. My podcast is one-on-one, and I really think that communicating and talking about things, we don't like to talk to each other. We don't like to say, why are you drinking so much? We don't like to say, why do you have to go go to a wine tasting vineyard, every time you come to town. Talking about it really does help. I know, I know people who kind of poo-poo, antidepressants, and I always say, it's a chemical imbalance. And there's nothing wrong with treating something that's wrong with you. You just can't go crazy. It's,
Yeah, right.
you do. I mean, it is, everything in moderation, which I think.
Well, and
no, go ahead.
I want it's also probably not a practical idea to look for a solution for everything that we've got in a pill. Mm-hmm. While the antidepressant that I take is a big part of it, so is my daily meditation. Mm-hmm. So is my fitness routine, mm-hmm. my spirituality, mm-hmm. My quiet time that I spend with self. We're not just going to take a pill and have everything get better. And it's funny, it's all of these things. It's like sitting down and eating a bag of potato chips and a bin of ice cream while you're doing it. It's awesome. But then afterwards, you're like, why did I do that? When we start to get ourselves into a habit where we just have a little bit more health, I suppose, where we're sleeping differently and communicating differently and eating differently and taking care of whatever mental health conditions you may have, then I think maybe we can get to a place where we can be a little bit more able to help the masses.
You are just a wonderful, thank you so much. Honestly, tell
Just
your
because you don't know
wife,
me.
that I said, no, thank you so much. I could talk to you all day, and I would like you
Let's do it again.
to be my therapist. What I'd like.
No, you wouldn't.
What, I could just talk to you about all my, issues, because gosh, honestly, I mean, I've said this to people, I could be a roaring drunk. I could have been the world's best drug addict. Um, you know, I threw myself into work so that, because I'm so afraid. It's the fear thing of becoming, my dad. And, I'm more like my dad than anyone else on earth. And, so yeah, so there's that. But you're great. I'm only wrapping up because the last time I was doing one of these, Zoom just cut us off. And, I didn't have a chance to say goodbye. Oh, are you there? Oh, there you're still.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh,
phone call
I thought that's it. They're cutting us off. They're cutting us off.
Well, let's do it again sometime.
Okay, I would like to do this thing with you if we could. I'm trying to start up this just like a series from now. Yeah, I mean, I would still just do it in my podcast and do it on my YouTube channel, but political woman. And I'm a political woman and I vote. I mean, what you said about they're not doing anything about any of these problems because homeless people don't vote. I mean, they've made
Poor
that.
people don't vote.
They've made that
Afflicted people
impossible.
don't vote.
Right.
We don't vote.
And we don't vote. And why? Especially when we've got, some people who don't believe in any of this that we're talking about, voting and raising more money, than God. So, yeah, I mean, I would love to just touch bases with you kind of on a semi-regular basis about the fight to force our legislators that we pay for to recognize these problems that we're having here at home, in our neighborhoods. And what are you going to do about it, damn it? So yeah.
With you. Good.
I mean, I would love to be able to connect with you, kind of on a regular basis with the email and, what are you doing? And, and can we talk about it? And, try to, share our posts and that kind of thing with each other's groups. So, because it's the only way that it's going to work. So.
That's good with me.
Okay. All right. Gosh, you're great. Thank you very much for your insight.
You're very welcome. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, you're wonderful. Keep up the good work. And I just want you to know on a personal level, I had a great trainer when I was living in Washington, and she took me to an Al-Anon meeting. And I mean,
cool.
Not to sound corny. I mean, I did meetings for about 3 years, when I was living in Washington, because I had such a hard time dealing with my dad, who would come visit, and get drunk, and called my daughter fat once when he was drunk. And,
my goodness.
I said, you're not going to be welcome here anymore. And I was just crying when I went to, my training session, and she said, you're going to a meeting with me tonight. And I did. I went with her, and it really just, I mean, hearing everybody else's problems was like, I mean, I got up the nerve to say to Dad, you're not drinking in my house. You're just, and yeah, and that was hard. So
it is good for you for doing that.
Well, well, and it prepared me for later life when I had to take away his keys. He lived with me the last 3 years of his life, and yeah, it was
So, oh, that's hard.
Anyway, yeah, but anyway, thank you. Thanks a lot. And I know the
You're
program.
very welcome.
All right. And God
I
bless.
look forward to talking more later.
Me too.
Take it.
All right. We'll do this. Okay.
See ya.
All right. Bye-bye.